I think it's oh. Hello, folks. Hey, Naomi, Mordechai.
Hi, David. Hi, all.
Hello, Bruce.
That doesn't sound that good.
Your audio sounds a little weird.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Now we're good.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Bruce. Bruce, I saw an interesting article on Chabad.org about a rabbi that lost several family members. And he's a young guy. And he's
Yes,
dealing with the situation. I don't know if you saw that.
I read it yesterday on Facebook. His daughter died.
Yeah.
A young girl, maybe 2 or 3 years old,
Mm.
and his wife is on life support right now.
Mm. And how,
I don't know the circumstances. I
Yeah.
don't know if they fell into the water. I don't know any of that.
I'm not sure if that's the one.
How you doing?
It might be somebody else, and he was talking about dealing with a tragedy where people passed away. I didn't read the article, but I thought
Unless other people passed away as well.
Yeah.
Because this was in another country that he just started. His wife actually started the Chabad where they are.
Right.
If that's the one you're talking about, David.
Yeah, I didn't look at the details yet. I didn't read the story, but I think it's somebody that he lost several members of his family or a member of his family a couple of years ago.
Oh no, this was just recent.
Yeah.
This was yesterday, in fact, that I'm talking about.
Yeah, so this might be a new thing. Yeah.
But how you doing, David?
Thank God. Coming along.
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
And I forgot to say thank you to you from last week when you told the rabbi that my hand has been up for quite a while.
Yeah, sometimes you can't see it on his device. I have a thing where I can see everybody. I have a gallery view or a speaker view.
All right, but as long as you're all right and everybody else is all right, Baruch Hashem.
Coming along. I'm recovering from a stroke that I had 2.5 years ago.
I heard that the other day when you told the rabbi that you couldn't write.
Yeah, my arm looks like that. I have braces so I don't contraction.
I actually had that on my wife's arm too. About 6-8 months ago. They say she had a stroke, but not in the conventional sense. She had a artery near the neck that had a inclusion, which is a blood clot.
Right.
And I asked the neurologist years ago, this happened like 25, 30 years ago. I said, can't you use a stent? No, they don't have them that small yet. So while she was in the hospital, the injection was so great that thank God she still had use of her neck, but blew the inclusion. Hello, Rabbi.
Hello, Rabbi.
Okay. All right. Good to see all of you. Yeah, sorry about switching the, this week we switched the dates around. I had a little emergency on Monday and Rabbi Rice switched with me. So everything worked out. Baruch Hashem, thank God.
He was expecting Rabbi Wernick after half
Yeah, that was another mistake. Yeah. Did he do he did the full hour in the end because Rabbi Wernick never showed up.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, that was a little mistake, but the first half hour was planned. I mean, I called him about that, obviously. So hopefully Rabbi Wernick will be here today at 3:30. The chapter that we're on is chapter 17 in the book of Shmuel Beis, and we're really up to right where Achitophel commits suicide. That's where we got up to, and in the Hebrew, the term is vayechonak. He instructed his family, vayetzavel beisoy, vayechonak, and he choked to death. And he was buried bekever aviv in his father's burial plot, which is basically, of course, this is very surprising. We all know committing suicide is a terrible sin. What was Achitophel thinking? Again, Achitophel, we have to think about who he is. He's this great scholar, very knowledgeable. His advice was so sound and perfect that it was as if it came from the Urim and Tumim. It's as if it came from the Shechina. His advice was like you couldn't get better advice, and he must have been a brilliant guy. Now, he gave advice this final time to Avshalom. He had joined Avshalom, of course, and he gave advice, and he saw that Avshalom is not following his advice. So he gave up. Why did he give up? Because Achitophel knew the truth. And the truth was that his advice was very good advice. He was so sure of himself that he also knew that if they don't follow his advice, then Avshalom is basically going to get killed. Not only will Avshalom get killed, everything will go downhill, and Achitophel himself will be considered a rebel against the kingdom of David. He will be someone who acted as a moired b'malchus, a person who was rebellious. And what is the law of someone who is rebellious? The law is that he gets killed and all of his possessions are taken by the king. And he won't get buried in his family plot. So Achitophel realized that things are not going to work out the way he wanted, because once Avshalom is not taking his advice, he basically saw it's going to be a failure. There's no hope now. There's no hope. Then he better find plan B, which is either allow himself to get killed, and then he's not going to be able to be buried in his father's plot, and he won't be able to, his possessions will not be inherited by his family, or he better kill himself. And by doing that, he will, if he kills himself, then at least he'll be buried in his father's plot, and he will, his possessions will be able to be divided by his inheritors. So that's what he did, and this is really it gives us a little insight into the way this Achitophel thought, which means that he might have studied a lot of Torah, but it didn't have an impact on his personal life. He didn't become more refined, more righteous. Instead, he learned Torah and he had his own agenda. And his own agenda was constantly thinking about his money, his possessions, his own interests, which definitely is surprising for someone who was so smart. You would think would realize the greatness of Hashem and the greatness of the Torah and humble himself. And yet it didn't have the right effect. And the interesting thing is he's not the only one who we find that was plagued with this. We find Doye Kwadoimi, which is the story that we learned earlier about someone who killed out the entire city of Nov, the city of the Kohanim, the same story. He was very knowledgeable, and at the same time, it didn't have an impact on his self-refinement. It didn't affect him. The Torah did not affect him in a positive way. Instead, it allowed him to become more arrogant and more cruel. And the truth of the matter is, if you look in the Talmud does say that studying Torah could be considered a medicine of health, of life. And if not, it could become a poison. Believe it or not, the Torah could actually be Sam Hamaves. There is such a concept. How could it be a poison? If a person does not allow himself to become more righteous and more holy, so that would be an avenue that you could use it for something negative. It's just like all medicine. It's interesting. Medicine is something, if you drink too much orange juice, I don't know if you're gonna, I don't know how sick you'll get. You might have an upset stomach or something. But, but medicine, if you take too much Tylenol, who knows? You could faint, you could collapse. Medicine, it has with it, on the one hand, potential for life, and it also has major danger. Overdose is many people die from overdose.
That's very true, Rabbi. Not to interrupt you, but when you
Thank you.
take too much of the Tylenol or acetaminophen as well, first thing you're going to develop is an ulcer. After that, a bleeding ulcer, and then it could very well be death.
Thank you, Bruce. I like when people agree with me. It's always a good feeling, especially because most of the classes I have, people like to debate and argue, but I also like that as well. Anyway, thank you, Bruce. So the story here, we see the same type of person, the same style of a person, like brilliant, arrogant, evil. Somehow it's a challenge that they have it's hard for them to humble themselves. And so Achitophel had this, and Doeg seemed to have it. And if you think about in the Chumash, we have someone who maybe was a little similar to this, Korach. Korach was, at least according to some opinions, he was a brilliant man, and he argued with Moshe Rabbeinu. It's a very similar idea. Doeg and Achitophel both hated David HaMelech, and Korach, and maybe they were jealous of David as well. And Korach was jealous of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe and Aaron. So you find this similar situation with these three people. Now the Mishnah does say that Achitophel and Doeg both did not get Olam Haba. They both lost the world to come. So it's not surprising. They were, they used the Torah for negative gain, negative purposes. Now Achitophel did his death was through a type of through choking. And the different places in the Talmud and Midrashim where it mentions the reason why he deserved to get this punishment. There is a story with David HaMelech where David tried to start building the Beis Hamikdash, and he dug very deep in the waters of the inner earth, the depths of the earth started gushing out potentially to overflow the entire world and destroy the world. David did not know what to do. And he gave he made an announcement that if anyone knows what the halacha is, he said, I would like to write God's name on some type of piece of wood and throw it down to where where I dug to, and that might stop the waters from coming up and overflowing the world. So he wanted to do that, but he wanted permission. He wanted to make sure that it's allowed, because he was very nervous if he writes God's name, it'll be erased, and it'll be considered like he erased God's name. So he made this announcement, said, anyone that knows the halacha, is this allowed for me to write God's name on this wood, and and hopefully that will save the world from being from drowning in this water. And he said, if someone knows this and doesn't answer me, may he choke to death. So that was the statement that David had made. And Achitophel knew the answer. And he told David, he said, well, if God allows his name to be erased for making peace between husband and wife, how much more so to make peace with the whole world, for the whole world to live, how much more so that should be allowed to in order to allow the world to exist. So David HaMelech then, of course, did this, wrote Hashem's name and threw it, and it actually worked. However, the Talmud says that once a great person gives such a curse, it takes effect no matter what. And it had an effect on Achitophel. And ultimately, he choked to death. Now, there's another concept about Achitophel, that he spoke Lashon Hara. A lot of his way of life was Lashon Hara. He was gossiping, constantly gossiping about David. And, you find that with people who have anger inside them, people who are jealous and angry, what they often do is they have to badmouth the other party. People who are confident in themselves, they don't need to badmouth people. But when you're jealous and angry and feel you should have that position and so on, so you gossip, and which is a terrible thing. But that's what Achitophel would do, and because of that, it had an effect that his throat is where he died from choking. And so these are some of the midrashic statements about Achitophel's death, suicide. Now, the verse that we're up to verse 24.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Before you go on verse 23 in the Me'am Louise, he says, Achitophel is reckoned among those who saw and recognized their shame. Because it says, when Achitophel saw that his advice was not followed, then all this took place. So it says Okay, and it says the others who recognized their shame were the giants in Genesis 6:4, Esav, Balak, Bilam, and Haman.
Is that implying like it's some form of rectification, the fact that they saw their shame, or it's part of their punishment? Is the emphasis that he got this? It was like a severe punishment to see your.
It doesn't say. It just says he saw his fortune in decline. He had fallen from grace. His counsel was rejected. Put himself in order and then strangled himself. But the main thing that it says is he was among those who quote unquote saw and recognized their shame.
He lived to see his shame.
Yeah.
Right.
So the other ones were the giants. It says the Titans, Esav, Bilam, Balak, and Haman.
Very nice. Very nice point that like a real serious punishment is someone who just sees how everything they did goes down the drain. Like that's the and then they die. So like they don't live to see if maybe anything works out. They just see their failure and they die. They don't deserve to see any success. They deserve to die in failure. Everyone has failures, but the trick is to be able to live to see the good times afterwards. And they didn't get to do that. Wow, very nice. So so the psukim continue about the war between Avshalom and David now. So David arrived at Machanayim, which is on the other side of the Jordan, which means not on the Israel side, but on the east side of the Jordan, maybe like where Jordan is today or further north. And Avshalom crossed the Yarden, the Jordan, he and every man of Israel with him. Avshalom appointed Amasa over the army, and in place of Yoav, Amasa was the son of a man named Yisra HaYisraeli. And he, Asher ba el Abigail bas Nachash achis Tzruya em Yoav. He was with a with Abigail. Who knows? He was married to Abigail, and the daughter of Nachash. Nachash is another name for Yishai, and the sister of Yoav's mother Tzruya. So this is a relative. Avshalom appointed this Amasa, who's a relative, because it's related to David and related to Avshalom. Avshalom is David's Avshalom is David's son. So it's a relative. Yes, David.
There's a map here, and it looks like Machanayim is directly from Shechem, on the same level, height-wise in the country.
The same north and south, the same level. Okay. So that's, if anyone wants to know where it is, that's where this is happening. This is taking place in the city of Machanayim, and we're dealing with this person by the name of Amasa, and
Rabbi, is this a different Machanayim than the one that Yaakov?
That's an interesting question, because Yaakov when he came back from his travels, he did go through the eastern side. He didn't travel back the same direction that he went to Haran. When he went to Haran, he went straight north from Eretz Yisrael, a little northeastern. But when he came back, he came more all the way directly east. So
he named Mahanaim.
yeah, yeah, it would make sense that this is the same place, right? The end of last week's parsha, and so that would make sense that this is actually that place. So the pasuk continues and says, "Oh, it calls Yishai the son of Abigail is the daughter of Nachash, the snake, and that is Yishai." Now, why is Yishai called a snake? So the Talmud says a very interesting thing. The Talmud says that there are 4 people who never sinned, and the only reason they died was because of the sin of the sin of
Snake.
the snake and Adam and Eve. So they died be'ityoy shel nachash. They died from that sin, the original sin, and which brought death to humanity. So that's the reason why Yishai is called Nachash, that is because that's why he died. He was someone who never sinned. Another person who never sinned was one of David's sons, Kislev. Another person who never sinned was Binyamin. And there's a 4th person who never sinned. There's 4 people who never sinned, and they died because of the trick of the Nachash. And Amram, father of Moshe, is the 4th one. Amram. Yes, Yehuda.
Wasn't Sarah Asher's daughter one who didn't sin?
That I don't know. Serach bas Asher. I'm not familiar with that statement about Serach bas Asher.
She
lived long. She lived a very long life.
No, she didn't die. She was one that I think it was her.
Yeah, maybe. So it says something similar to that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So she didn't die. So in other words, this is mentioning the 4 people who died but didn't sin. And maybe if what you're saying is she didn't die, so she went to Gan Eden alive, like Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'd have to look up. It's hard to keep track of all the midrashic statements. There's the numerous statements about different stories.
Was she the one that remembered where Joseph put his bones?
That's Serach bas Asher. She remembered everything. Pakadati. She was the one who broke the news to Yaakov that his Yosef's alive. Anything else?
The Egel, didn't she give them the name of Hashem to create the Egel or something like that?
No, that's Micha.
Micha, right?
Micha. Micha took that and ended up making problems with it, but by you throwing it into the furnace, right? But so Serach bas Asher, I don't know about the fact that Serach bas Asher never sinned, but anyway, here we have Yishai. So it's interesting. David's father, Moshe's father, and David's son Kislev, and Binyamin, the son of Yaakov. These are the 4 people who never sinned, but because there was the whole sin, the original sin with this snake, because of that sin, death came upon the world, and everyone has to basically go through death. And the death affected these 4 people. Now, the verse continues and says, I think I just lost the place. 1 second. Okay, so Israel and Avshalom encamped in the land of Gilad. And it happened when David came to Machanayim, Shkavi, the son of Nachash, from Rabbah, the capital of the children of Ammon, and Macher, the son of Amiel, from Lodavar, and Barzillai of Gilad from Roigel. So here we have these three people who were maybe enemies of David. They changed sides over here. They joined David HaMelech, and they brought him provisions. And it continues from Roiglim. They took bedding, bowls, pottery, wheat, barley, flour, toasted grains, beans, lentils, toasted legumes, honey, butter, sheep, and cow's milk, cheeses, and they brought them to David and to the people with him to eat. For they said, the people are hungry and exhausted and thirsty in the desert. So what happened here, similar to, maybe in contrast to, I should say, in contrast to what happened with Achitophel, here we have David seeing a little light at the end of the tunnel. We see people changing sides to join David. And who are these people? Shavi, the son of Nachash. Shavi is from the word tshuva, that Nachash was the king of Ammon, and he had a son who originally was a little cruel to the Jewish people, because his officers told him, you should not trust David when they come to be Menachem Avel. They're coming to comfort you for his father's death. And he was the king, he was the new king of Ammon, and they convinced him that these Jews are probably coming to spy out the land. And so he cut off half of their beards. And David felt that that was a terrible, terrible crime and created a war. And David HaMelech had the people who only had half a beard, they waited in a certain area, which wasn't a popular place, and until their beards grew back. And this king, he ended up doing tshuva, and he came to David to help David out, and that's why he's called Shavi, from the word tshuva. And then you have another person here, Macher, the son of Amiel, and Barzillai of Gilad from Roiglim, and these also were people that had to do with Shaul HaMelech, and ultimately they changed sides in order to be together with David. And so David is feeling really he's seeing the light that he has been working so hard all throughout his life. He's finally seeing that things are actually maybe turning, that the tides are turning, and he's seeing some positive things come. So he's suffered, he's seen all the suffering, and now maybe he'll see some good times. And now we'll